Hello everyone, Brandon King for KTAR News here. I was recently able to attend the 24th annual Phoenix Film Festival. I was able to see 9 films at the festival. Huge opportunity and huge space for film creatives, both locally to Arizona and also coming from all the way around the country, even around the world. And I figured I'd give you a quick recap as feasibly as I could, my 5 that stood out to me the most. So without further ado, at number 5 is Greg Quidar's Sing Sing. Now, I'm not going to say too much about this one because I actually have a review for it set when it comes out into theaters in July. I will simply give you the basic premise. Sing Sing Correctional Facility in New York. There is a theater program there to rehabilitate prisoners. Coleman Domingo, who was recently just nominated for his performance as Bayard Rustin in Rustin, film with the same name. He stars here as the de facto leader of the theater troupe. Paul Raci, who was also nominated for a couple years ago for a movie called Sound of Metal, stars as the liaison between the prison and the theater troupe. Clarence Macklin stars as actually one of several real-life prisoners who joins the theater troupe in the movie and both outside of the movie and the production. It's kind of meta in that way. And essentially they have to kind of work through this new production that they're dealing with while also dealing with the constraints and systematic obstacles that the prison system represents. Again, I'm not going to say too much about it. I will simply tell you that it is a surprisingly effective crowd pleaser. Coleman Domingo, Clarence Macklin are fantastic in it. I would highly recommend that you seek it out because it is probably going to surprise you in ways that you were not expecting. At number 4 is Jordan Knoll's Guacamole Yesterdays. This was essentially pitched to me by someone in the festival circuit as Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, but more rom-com-y, and I cannot say they're wrong about that. Essentially, you have Sophie Edwards here as a woman who is going to therapy and is the subject of a new essentially therapeutic method where her memories are able to be accessed and slightly changed after a traumatic event with her and her ex. I was going into this, again, with very odd expectations. I've only seen bits and pieces of Eternal Sunshine, so I don't know all the context around it. But I will simply tell you that the movie itself is, again, a really strange surprise in a lot of ways. It's sweet. It's really funny. Her boyfriend in the movie is a stand-up comic, and it leads to a lot of interesting comedy between himself and her, who she is a comic writer, and there's a lot of interesting nuance about the value of art and the often struggles that artists have to go through to make their work feel worthwhile. Their chemistry is really quite good. I like the occasional back and forth and redirects we get between her and her therapist. It's strangely structured in certain ways. It can kind of bounce back and forth between what's real and what's not. But I think what really makes up for it is 2 key things. I think color design wise, this is one of the most stunningly elegant movies I've seen in a while. I was actually able to ask the director during the Q&A afterwards what they were essentially trying to do with the color scheme, where it's a lot of bright pastels. Like he was trying to tell me that it's very much, she's in red, he's in blue. There's a lot of like purple sparks when they come together. And the movie really defines that color scheme really well. It's shot very effectively where it will kind of close off spaces in this one house that they're in or in the therapy sessions. And it will make for this environment that you're constantly wondering what's going on. And I didn't find it manipulative, at least not in most sense of the word. But I found it really investing. And the other thing I will simply say is there is a thing that gets revealed / switched up with the characters towards the third act that kind of makes you recontextualize both of them in their most personal, but also their most flawed regards. It's not a movie with easy to like characters necessarily, but it is really fascinating. And once that thing comes into play, it really drove the message of the movie home for me. And I think a lot of people, if they're willing to give it a chance, it doesn't actually have distribution yet, but I would tell you to keep an eye for it. But when and if you do get to it, I would tell you it's not necessarily what you think it might be, but what it is something rewarding and poignant and maybe hopes to explore things about humanity that we don't necessarily want to talk about. At number 3 is Cyril Aris's Dancing on the Edge of a Volcano. No, it does not necessarily have to do with either dancing or volcanoes. Essentially, there's a lot of plot to this one. This is a documentary about a making of a movie called Costa Brava, Lebanon, that was shortlisted for the International Film Oscar a couple of years ago. Basically, this follows the group of filmmakers who made that film in August of 2020, which was a harrowing year for weather in Lebanon. The COVID-19 pandemic was ripe in effect in that time. And on top of that, you also had the explosion in Beirut that killed dozens of people and basically shut the city down for weeks, if not months on end. And the story is essentially about this group of filmmakers going through every hoop imaginable to try and make this movie as special as they believe it can be. They literally are about to start pre-production, I think, 2 days before the explosion goes off in Beirut, and from there it is just nonstop struggle after nonstop struggle. If you have had any experience, again, if there's going to be a recurring thing in this video, making art and the validity of making art, there's the idea of, trying to push forward when overarching structures will not let you do that, for sometimes valid reasons and sometimes for very convoluted reasons. There's a whole section of the movie where one of the stars in the movie is Palestinian and has to go essentially through 4 or 5 different countries just to make the shoot date for the movie. There's, again, all the stuff with the weather that shuts down production. There's obviously, there's a matter of COVID where some of the younger actors wind up getting that, and that shuts production down. And it's riveting. It is absolutely riveting. And the way that it shows not just the idea, because I think the movie could so easily delve into the idea of, it could easily delve into the idea of, look at these filmmakers, the audacity of them to try and make something like this while their city is shut down, while their family members are suffering. How dare they? And it actually really adamantly goes the other way around, where this is a group of people from not just Lebanon, but, Israel and Syria and all these other neighboring countries and communities coming together to make this thing, to just try and take that pressure off of their lives when everything around the world is being, blown up around them. There's some really pivotal conversations between the director of the movie and her father, who was, who has been through several civil wars and, kind of knows the country and is a professor and speaking to a lot of younger communities at the time of, again, the pandemic and the explosion and everything. And it makes for this riveting soup of, of dissertation and determination and really just, gut-wrenching gusto, essentially, to try and make this movie actually happen. I will admit, I have not seen Costa Brava, Lebanon yet, but it was absolutely added to my Netflix list right afterwards, and I hope that you all seek this out. It does not have distribution, the documentary, I should say, but Dancing on the Edge of a Volcano, you will not forget a title like that, and you will not forget the movie with a name like that. At number 2, this was very close between 2 and 1. These are both films that I utterly adore, but coming in at the runner-up is Sarah T. Schwab's A Stage of Twilight. This essentially stars Karen Allen, who most of you might know as Marion Ravenwood from the Indiana Jones movies, and William Sadler, who has been in a bunch of things, but I recognize, because I'm a nerd, as Death from the Bill and Ted movies. They are an older couple living in, I think, upstate New York. I don't know if they make the location clear, but it's, modern day. They've been together for, 50, 60 years. One of them receives a terminal diagnosis about their health, which leads the other one to kind of reconsider their relationship based on the choices that the person with the terminal diagnosis is making. On top of that, you have a parallel storyline going on with a farmhand that lives right down the street from them, who's kind of become a surrogate son, played by, and I apologize if I'm saying the last name wrong, Martin Quijoyas. I apologize on that, but he is really riveting as kind of someone who's going through his own sense of career trajectory. He's planning on going to college, but his family is really trying to make him stick around and take over the family dairy farm. But again, he has this elderly couple who, believe in your dreams, look at what we turn out to be, that kind of thing. And it really makes for this paralleling story about change, and specifically the idea of change being something that is existentially terrifying when you don't quite know what to do about said change, and when people have made decisions about said changes for themselves, what you can do or what you feel yourself capable to be doing. It really strikes with you in, again, that, to use the word existentially. But on top of that, it is really sweet. I love Karen Allen and William Sadler in this. I don't know enough of their filmography to say if it's career best performances, but they are really something special as far as this couple who you truly believe have just decades of hardship on top of hardship on top of hardship coming after them. I really like, the farmhand as well. There's a really great dynamic between him and his brother, him and his girlfriend, and then him going back to the couples and kind of where they all intertwine. They're all kind of long-term family friends. And so you get that sense of close-knit community of something like, say, a Yellowstone or a Montana story, or, those similar isolated countryside stories that maybe don't have every bit of flair to them, but are entirely based in, human heart and empathy. I can't say it'll be for everyone. It's a little slow at times. It does kind of just end towards the end of the movie. It doesn't really have a huge build up to it, but I found it riveting on an emotional level. I think the turns that it makes, the kind of ticking clock that it sets up with the diagnosis, with the going off to college thing, it's one of those movies that I really latched onto as like a festival darling, so to speak. I think everyone just has one of those at the festival. Literally, I talked to about a dozen plus people at the festival. No one knew this film existed aside from me, seemingly, and I absolutely adored it. It is coming on digital distribution at the end of April on Amazon, iTunes, digital platforms like that. So I highly implore you to please check it out. It is one of those darlings that deserves all the acclaim that it has not been getting yet, and I just loved. And finally, number 1. This, again, was close between Stage of Twilight and this film, and for literally a strange period of time, because I saw Stage of Twilight, I want to say second or third day of the festival. This was the closing night film of the festival. So for about 9 days there, I was pretty convinced that I'd be telling you all Stage of Twilight is the best film of Phoenix Film Festival. And then I saw Josh Margolin's Thelma. And Thelma is the best film I saw this year at the festival. This stars June Squibb, Academy Award nominee, National Treasure June Squibb, as a nonagenarian, which I believe the term for a 90-year-old. Again, essentially senior citizen living in California after the death of her husband. Fred Heschinger from The White Lotus plays her grandson, who is kind of like her most trusted confidant. The late Richard Roundtree, I believe this is his final or one of his final film appearances ever before his passing, plays kind of one of her last remaining friends in that age group. Anyways, to the point of the film, you essentially find Thelma getting a call that her grandson has been in a car crash. And oh my God, that's awful. We're going to need, all the money to go and help him. So she sends the money to help him. Turns out she's been phone scammed. And her family is incredibly worried about that. Fred Heschinger, obviously, as well as people like Clark Gregg from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Parker Posey from Lost in Space pop up in there. All very well-meaning in that way. Thelma, however, does not take the normal route. She then decides she's going to track down the person who took her money and get it back so no one has to worry about her again. And shenanigans ensue. I adore this movie. I think it is utterly hilarious. I think there are moments where there's just kind of that very deadpan sense of humor that June Squibb brings to the whole role, where I think I called it to the press people afterwards the most unserious, serious movie you'll see all year, because it does actually have something to say about how we treat our elderly, how we view our elderly, the idea of, once you get to a certain age, the idea that you need constant attention and constant help for every little thing. There's a whole moment that's played for laughs early on in the film where she's trying to get a ride to this from this post office area to like the first place she has to go, and she's just keep calling people, and she finds out that all of them are dead. And it's played off for laughs of, oh my God, I didn't know, Sarah had passed away. Oh yes, died from pancreatic. Oh, that's so sad. But it's played for laughs, but underneath that, there is a very serious sense of these are people who are losing friends and, losing loved ones and losing connections. And those those brief moments that we get between her and Richard Roundtree in the movie are so pivotal. There's a moment where essentially he's kind of her conscience for the entire movie. And there's a moment where he has to reiterate to her of like, you can't do everything for yourself. Like, it's nice you have this agency, but there are things in this world that you just can't do anymore. There's a really beautiful moment when they go and meet a friend of theirs, and the actress's name is avoiding me, but Richard Roundtree says goodbye. And it's kind of that thing where you see on June Squibb's face that maybe there's more to this than I'm just thinking of, my family is well-meaning and I'm constrained to all that. It's a really beautiful balancing act of a movie that knows how to make you laugh, make you cry. I did, in fact, cry at the end of this movie, and I'm not ashamed of it. The action is well staged. It's well shot. Essentially, if I said that Sing Sing was the surprise crowd pleaser of the festival, I take that back. This is the surprise crowd pleaser of the festival. It will make you feel every possible thing under the sun with a lead performance in June Squibb that I hope gets some kind of awards consideration, probably like Independent Spirit or something like that, but who knows, maybe keep your eye out during Oscars. It's early in the year. I absolutely adored her in this. I adored the story behind it. It reminded me a lot of really poignant conversations with my own family recently about, family members and loved ones getting up there in age, and what do we do? How can we help them? And what agency do they still have left? This is going to theaters in June, so you can check it out. And I implore you to do so. Unlike something like A Stage of Twilight that you might have to track down, this is going to be in theaters. Go, have a great time. I saw this in a packed house. You will not regret it. It's one of the best movies of the year. Chalk it up with Dune Part 2 and probably everything else that's going to be coming out in, October to December. I love this movie. I hope you all will enjoy it as much as I did, and I cannot go to bat for it enough. So that being said, that is the 5 films that stood out to me the most from this year's Phoenix Film Festival. Did any of you get to attend this year's festival? Did you see 1 film, 5 films, 10 films? As I heard some people say, 30 or more films. I don't know how that happened, but that's kind of the point of these festivals. You get to, go around and, see these weird little art house movies, and these, indie distributors get their chances and see what's out there. Did any of you get to go? And if so, please comment below in that comment section what you saw, what you loved, and if any of the movies I saw gave you any interest that maybe you didn't have before. I hope that I could be of some service on that. As usual, subscribe to KTAR on YouTube. Go follow us on all the social media platforms. More videos coming here very soon. I'm Brandon King for KTAR News. See you next time.